Alright, Chapter 12, Exception Handling and how to read in text file input and how to write to text file instead of reading from the console scanner input or GUI and write out to display to the screen or console. You can just read and write from text file. But we need to understand the concept of exception handling first. So one programs that normally runs and have runtime errors, like when you use scanner to read in input from the keyboard, right? And let's look at example. Like program normally going to terminate, right, abnormally, and we say how we're going to handle that without letting the program terminate. Now I'm going to create that. Like I'm going to create a keyboard, read in from the keyboard input. Keyboard.next int, as I expect to read in integers. So let's run the program. And I type in a letter, so the program terminates. And there's an error, input mismatch exception. So that means program terminates, right? Like I said here, sometimes when we write a program, we don't want the program to terminates, right? Like at runtime, it did terminate at runtime. The program terminates abnormally. How can you handle this situation, right? Runtime error, so that the program can continue to run or terminate gracefully, either still running or just instead of showing me that error messages, it should just tell me why. Because I'm the user, I'm not going to be able to read this type of errors. I don't know what's that. So this is what we're going to look at in this chapter. Exception handling. So we just look at an overview. So we're going to explore into the benefit of using this and distinguish between exception types, error versus exception, check versus uncheck, declare exception in the method header, throw exception, and try catch blocks. So what are the difference here? Explain how an exception is propagated, obtain information from an exception object, develop application with exception handling, finally clause in a try catch. Alright, we have finally. So we learn what's final. Final, when you want the method no longer overridden, we can use final. We can make final as a constant. Right, in the previous chapter we just talked about that. We can make final as a constant when we define final to the variables. In chapter 11, right, no longer written. Or we can make a class no longer extended. You cannot extend or inherit from that class. We can put final keyword. But this one we look at finally. Okay, finally is different from final. So this is a keyword finally, which is in try catch we have finally clause too. We look at what's that. The use of exception only for unexpected errors. To rethrow exception in a catch block. To create chained exceptions. To define custom exception classes. We're going to create our own exception classes. Discover file directory properties. To delete and rename files directory and to create directories using the file class. So we're going to visit what file class is. And we're going to visit what's print writer class do. And we're going to do try with resources to ensure that the resources are closed automatically. read data from a file using the scanner class. We already use scanner to read from the keyboard, but now we're going to read from the text file using scanner. And understand how data is read using a scanner. We're going to develop a program to replace text in a file. Like just look at for the text or word and replace with that new word or text. So that means we can read in and we write back to the file. So that's why this is text IO here. Input output. And read data from the web. And we're going to develop a web crawler, an application. Exception handling overview. So we have runtime errors. It could be because, like I shown you, input mismatch, or it could be the you divide by 0. This is like equation quotient program. So this is another example. If I try to divide by 0, read input in, you're going to have an error. It's going to throw an exceptions if the input is 0. So we can test this code too. Besides the input here, right? So this is, I'm going to call a class quotient. Alright, so if we run this one, it should be an error if I try to divide first integer with 0. See, throwing errors. And that is runtime errors. And you may notice that the user will not like this. And we don't want the program to terminate like that. How are we going to handle that? So let's look at the Lice Attack catch is very similar to if statement. So if I add the if statement in, so it's a if where the number 2 not equal to 0, we still do divide. Else we just divide, just print out the message that divisor cannot be 0. Okay, that should take care of, right? If we do if else. So let's put that statement in. Instead of letting it do like that, just surrounding with if else, right? Now let's run it and do the same number. One zero. It should say, hey, divisor cannot be 0. So it's handled that. Program terminate with a message, right? Now we're going to modify this a little bit to include the methods. So this is the method, right? To do the quotient, pass in the methods with 2 parameters and do the same if it equal to 0, we say we're not going to be able to divide 0 by 0, and the program pretty much just call the quotient. Otherwise it's going to just return the solution of number 1 divided by number 2 as a result. And this program should be working even we modify it to the method concept. So I'm going to create a new class to test that. Quotient with method. run this, and we should not see exception. Even we put 1, 0, we should see errors. It's just a message. Alright, so now let's look at another example. Now we're going to include exceptions. And I want you to look at the advantages of using exception handling instead of using the other ways. So it should enable a method to throw an exception to its caller. Without this capability, a method must handle the exception or terminate the program. Alright, so let's look at this. So we modify this, but instead of printing out, we said throw. Alright, system.out, we throw exceptions. And the one who used the methods, like the caller, remember caller, right? Main call the quotients has to surrounding with try catch, right? So we call the methods, and the result return if it's good. If there's a problem to divide by 0, it's throw. It's throw to the catch statement, and we can say arithmetic exception that you cannot divide by 0. Okay. So let's look at this program. Quotient with exception. So you see that's 4 versions, right? First version we not handle, there's an error. Second version we use if else to handle. Third version we just use the method way, which is the same thing. And lastly we can use try catch, right? Again, the difference is we just not printing out here, we just do throw. And when we use it, we just surround it with try catch. When throw is going to handle the message, it's going to print it right here instead. If it passes, return a result. So let's see 1, 0. See, it's just print the exception message instead. Now the difference, you see that if I do if else version with the methods, the program terminates right away. Let me show you. 1, 0. Terminate, process, finish, right? But if you do exception, look, I do the same thing, message, instead of printing, I throw it. Throw it, that means when I try to do divide, if it's good, return result. If it's not, it's handle catch, right? And print out the message. But I want you to notice that after the print out, it still continue executing the rest of the code, which is the benefit of doing try catch instead of if else. See that? Cannot divide by, and then still do what you want it to do. Your program still continues. And then at the end of statement, just stop. So that's the benefits. That's why we don't want to use if else, but try catch over if else. Alright, so next video we come back and we gonna look at further into this chapter.